my key expertise is with human super recognisers. They're usually middle-aged ladies who want to, I think they fancy being Jane Bond for the week.
And where do you find these people? What kinds of job advert or job description do you use when you're looking to hire? Do the private security industry, you know, especially those who have sort of a lot of the CCTV contracts, do they all know about super recognisers?
I don't think they do, really.
Welcome back to Talk About It Tuesdays. Today I have Mike Neville. Mike, I'm going to pass over to you to explain what you do. You've got very interesting career background, so over to you.
Well, thank you. So my key expertise is with human super recognisers, who are people who never forget faces, and generally setting up end-to-end CCTV systems so the court can use the evidence. So with the super recognisers and the CCTV, so I was in the Met Police, I was in the Royal Military Police, then I was in the Metropolitan Police. Yep. As a young detective, I realised that the police were not using CCTV effectively, so they simply weren't gathering it. If they gathered it, they showed it locally. If somebody was identified, officers could choose to do or not do something with it, and there was no tracking. So, and I compared that against fingerprints and DNA, because fingerprints and DNA are very organised. So an expert gets them. When they find them, it's compared on a national database. If somebody's identified, then there's a whole process around the detectives know what they're doing, and they're checked on. And even at the highest levels, the Home Office can confirm whether forces are dealing with images correctly, and I just found that this wasn't the case. So I set up a system where that changed. So there was units gathering CCTV, and there was a central identification unit which came through me. Yeah. Now, as I circulated more and more images, it became readily apparent that certain officers had skills where they made lots of identifications. Now, it was a question
for automatic recognition before.
Yes. There was some facial recognition systems, but you got to imagine with facial recognition systems, they only work in very tight areas. You know, so if you look at the airport, you have to stand there and you have to look at it. Your compliance, it can see your whole face. It's comparing it with a passport image. The lighting is perfect because we've been able to engineer that. The background is perfect, and still it doesn't work. So the idea, so humans are far better at this. And so and there's an example of that in the riots of 2011. We had 4,000 images of suspects. The machine identified one out of the 4,000. One officer identified 180. You know, so there's the difference of. And you know yourself, you could recognise your mum, your sister, your brother, your uncle, probably by the back of their head as they wandered down the street. No machine, thankfully, can do that. But as I circulated more images, and you know, I put out 100 images, I'd probably get 50% identified. Now that 50, it wouldn't be 50 officers making 50 identifications. There were certain officers who were making 10s and 15s and 20s. And so are they just good officers? Or is there something else? So I fell in with a chap who's now Professor Josh Davis from the University of Greenwich, and we started to organise some testing, and he was quite sceptical at first, but then because his job, his PhD was in bad identifications by the police, which resulted in wrongful convictions. Yeah. But he said, I think we've got something here. So we had we developed got some EU funding, and we developed tests. And I also tracked all the identifications, so I know which officer was identifying an image, people have been charged, have they been convicted. And so there was two ways, you know, we could see, one on operational level who had made identifications which was a success, and secondly we developed tests along the way. So this was developed, became very successful. We saw the super recognisers have been involved in all sorts of serious cases of murders, most recently the Salisbury Novichok suspects. Wow. Grenfell Tower identifying the fraudsters who claimed they lived in the block. So the super recognisers are equally good at saying that person wasn't there. It's equally important to be able to be definite about that. Yeah. Hillsborough inquiry, they found the last 24 victims they hadn't found in the crowd footage. I retired from the police. I'd done 33 years in the army and police combined, so I retired in 2017.
Well deserved, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I started to look at this, to run this as a business and to recruit super recognisers privately, which I now do, and supply them. So we do different things. So super recognisers, supply them back to the police, and also we provide events. So different events, like for example the NEC, we've done work, Wimbledon tennis, Premiership football grounds, where they have a particular need to keep somebody out because everybody's got different problems. The super recogniser is the ideal person to say, as part of a security team, to say, right, that individual is on the list, stop them. You know, Raw wins a horse show, you've got the Queen there, you've got the King of Dubai. You know, you don't want the wrong person getting in there. So as part of the team, they can say, that is the person on the list. The security team can move in and do their work.
Yeah.
And also we run training. So what we find with super recognisers is that people have a natural skill, whether they're law enforcement or security or CCTV operators. Which one thing having a natural skill, like the analogy I draw, you could find a 15-year-old boy who's absolutely fantastic footballer,
Yeah.
but you couldn't put him in an Arsenal shirt on Saturday and say, right, play the game, because he doesn't understand the team, probably doesn't know the rules fully, doesn't understand the tactics that team is. So what we do is we train people who've been tested and found to have the skill. We then train them so they've got the legal knowledge around the identification law,
Yeah.
and they've got the ethical knowledge around human rights, about how they use their skill to make identifications to make sure that the evidence could be used at court. So they're the things we do with human super recognisers.
And where do you find these people? What kinds of job advert or job description do you use when you're looking to hire?
Well, we have people. So the University of Greenwich is approached all the time by people who say, I think I've got this skill. And we've got an association of super recognisers. We set up an association of super recognisers. Lord Lingfield is the chairman of that. The idea behind the association is we have a code of conduct, so people sign up to say they'll use their skill in the same manner as they would say, I would use forensic science. So they say, I'm committed to an impartial view. I won't be pressured into making identifications. I'll make them lawfully. So they sign up to that, and so people sign up and do tests, and we get all sorts of people who do. We get people who want to earn money from it, people sometimes who want to enhance their skills, so possibly the CCTV operator. Yeah. We train law enforcement officers who want to do it. I mean, oddly, on some of the courses, we get people who just really don't want to earn money. They're happy to do it. They're usually middle-aged ladies who want to, I think they fancy being Jane Bond for the week. They've realised they have this skill, and they come, and we run an exercise where you're spotting a potential terrorist or terrorist gang in Covent Garden or Borough Market, and people, if you've never been involved in that sort of thing, we do a law enforcement type briefing, and it's so exciting, to run around.
And how do normally, when people come through to you and they say, I think I'm a super recogniser, or I've got this skill, what is it that they've realised that they see, or that they that's different to other people?
Well, the best, Kelly Hersey, who's our chief operating officer, she has done of the millions of people who've done the test, Professor Davis says she's one of the highest scorers. Yeah. So what she says is that she doesn't really, what happens is almost like a light bulb moment in her head, or she's looking at a crowd of people, they're all in black and white, but the one she's looking for is in colour, sort of thing. Okay. So what we do with people, they come forward, they do it, if people want to do an initial screening test, if they put super recognisers Greenwich test in Google, it will come up with an initial 14 face test. But if they score on that, what we do, we have a short test where people pay £30 to do it's a more detailed online test. And what we're looking for is several skill areas. So firstly, it's short-term memory. So the people who can look at a passport, look at your face and say yes or no, is that you? Then we're looking at more long-term recognition. So in a week's time, could you still remember the faces you've got? And then we have a test for spotting faces in a crowd. Could be like the Hillsborough inquiry, where you're doing it post-event, where you're looking at a whole TV stuff from years ago, basically you're looking for a person's face. Or it could be like Notting Hill Carnival, where you're live at an event and you're looking at that, you're looking at or a football match live. And so we do that. And some people, there's 3 skills, but some people are good at all 3, so they're the best. But they're scored, and we know exactly their skill profile. So we have 2 categories really. We have super recognisers, who are good at all, and then we have people called super matchers, and they are the ones who are particularly good at the passport sort of affair. They're looking at your face.
Do you get contracted by, is it usually the organisers of big events, or is it the security firms? Like, do the private security industry, especially those who have sort of a lot of the CCTV contracts, do they all know about super recognisers?
I don't think they do really. We get contracted in by the event itself, like Wimbledon tennis or NEC, whatever. But I really do think for major security companies, the question is, why wouldn't you want to know? So you've got a bigger threat at the moment. So you're now in a situation, security manager, where you've got a big event and you want to keep out some nasty people or some people involved in dishonesty or violence or whatever wickedness they're involved in. And now they're all allowed to wear masks. And they can legitimately wear a mask and say, I can't take it off because I'm frightened to death of catching this terrible virus. So why wouldn't they want to know which of their team were super recognisers, so they could be even better at spotting? And that's what we can offer. We can find those people for them and then train them so they can use that skill to the best. Why wouldn't you want to know who in your employ has got this skill? Because if you find out that this person has got this skill, you're the security manager of a major company, you could then deploy that person to the right place. Rather than thinking, anybody can spot them. Right, I've got a key access point here. Right, I know that Fred and Joanne, they're super recognisers. Right, they're going to go on that gate there. As part of the course, 2 days of it is with a guy called Dr. Craig Donnell, who's a psychologist from South Africa who trains people around the world to spot suspicious behaviour, whether that's law enforcement wise or in a casino, a CCTV environment, security. And so we build on the person's natural super recogniser skill. So they might not have seen a photograph of this individual, but they can still spot and say, well, there's something odd, suspicious, and we see the tragedy of things like the Manchester Arena, don't we? Somebody with those skills would have possibly spotted, that person wasn't right, didn't fit in. So even if they hadn't seen his face, they could think, oh, that's a bit...
Even the people doing their job, if you can do your job better and you can take more pride in what you're doing and create more output, more results, you're going to put in more effort. You're going to enjoy working more.
I absolutely agree. So we know, and if people feel that their skills are being recognised, there's a chance of doing better, being more professional. We know, and if you've got a bank of images, don't show them to those. And we also can tell people that some people are absolutely useless, so don't put them there.
CCTV.
Don't, never. This person has obviously got real good skills at something, but they're not the ones on the entrance saying, is Billy Smith coming in? Because they couldn't tell me from Frank Bruno. That's no good. Some people are like that. We've got to know, haven't we? Because I'm the boss. I need to know this. So I'm not putting Fred. He's very good with the dog. Go over there with the dog, Fred. We're not having you checking faces because you can't do it. But we know that Michelle, she's absolutely fantastic. In fact, you stand there, Michelle, and you tell me if this guy comes in. That's just making better use of your resources and making people feel valued at work because they know that they've got this skill and they're not being turfed off to some job. I think I'd be much better at there,
Changing the sort of even the sort of client and societal perception of CCTV operators. I mean, I feel like there's a perception that it's just sort of a big guy, just bored, sat on their chair, watching a load of videos on their phone. And in reality, they can be doing a huge amount of very valuable work. And actually, if we push the fact that actually there's a skill here and the people that are in these operation rooms are skilled, that again changes the perception because, one of the things that we're trying to push through, you know, obviously our, you know, our little addition to the conversation is the whole idea of, you know, the pay rates within the private security industry, and how, you know, it's seen as an unskilled industry, you know, and this is the, you know, this is one area that can add to actually that, you know, we are professionals, and
Absolutely.
doing these roles are skilled and talented.
I was just going to say that, you know, I had a great relationship in London, especially with the council controllers who've been badly treated by the police before I sort of got involved, and there was like a breakdown in communication. But what I started to do is give out awards for the best, you know, operators and the like, and we did some testing. And I know that, for example, Lambeth control room has got at least one super recogniser. And again, if you're the CCTV supervisor or the manager, and the police say, look, we've got this drug dealing operation going on, or this very serious crime, or you're tasked to do a certain thing, surely you want to know that Fred is the best person to do that job, and put Fred on that camera that's the critical one, because then it looks good on your control room because you spot the right individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of those that move into this, you know, what are there other sort of career routes that once they've established themselves as super recognisers that they can move into, or, you know, step up into? Like, what kind of other opportunities?
Yeah, so there's companies like Yoti, for example. There's several of them, but Yoti, YOTI, is a company which does online identification verification. So people, you know, they're trying to buy some whiskey or whatever, or they're trying to get a mortgage, they have to show their face, and they will say yes or no, that's the same person. It could be that they want to join law enforcement, and they can go forward like that, or get a better job as a CCTV operator. Some people also go into video analytics, because then they're used to check the images that the machine is throwing up. So, and we know that certain police forces are now saying, I was just on the phone to Switzerland today, the Zurich police, they're looking into this, and they put out an advert saying, are you a super recogniser? Oh, wow. So it's ever expanding. But as I say, there's people...
Is this a global thing? I mean, because you said you started it, didn't you? A number of years.
So it's spread. So where we know it operates is that Japan had its own version. They call them some kind of hunter, that, you know, they study the eyes and they pick up people. Okay. But from the UK, we've noticed, but Germany is particularly a hot spot. So the super recognizer unit's been set up in Cologne, Stuttgart, Munich, Berlin, sort of there. And then so you've got German-speaking bits of Switzerland, so Zurich fits in with that. Also, Queensland in Australia, there's a sergeant out there set up the first super recognised unit in the Southern Hemisphere. Yeah. I'm speaking to the Gendarmerie and Police Nationale in France, yeah. And then various UK police forces, and I'm also looking at running a course out in the US. There's lots of interest in the US for obvious reasons. Yeah. UK made lots of mistakes with CCTV. It thought putting up a, you know, 6 million, 10 million, whatever number of cameras we've got, because no one knows, putting those cameras up was the ultimate solution. But that's not the ultimate solution, is it? You've got to pick...
But then you've got hours and hours and hours of footage to watch with.
Yeah, who's going to watch them? Who's going to watch the CCTV? How are we going to get it to the police? How are we going to get it to the courts? Yeah. How are we going to make sure? So we could, the mistakes of the UK, the problem of the UK is that we've been doing CCTV for a long time. Yeah. We've been doing security for a long time.
We are one of the most watched countries.
Oh yeah, we are one of the most watched countries by cameras. But if they have this Big Brother watch, but if it is Big Brother, he's asleep because nothing happens with it, you know. So it's all right having loads of cameras, but if the police are not getting the footage, we're not convicting people. I mean, I've reviewed several police forces, and I can tell you it's shameful the amount of convictions to get from CCTV. All this work's been done by security staff doing a fantastic job, and the police aren't doing anything with it, and we need to change that. And the super recognisers is one step in the way that we can say to the police, look, what about, you've got to identify more people. And then, so if you use CCTV and super recognisers in a proper system, that's what doesn't exist at the moment in most parts of the UK. Yeah. That will result in more convictions.